Apologize. There was an incident that occurred a number of years ago that I felt merited some comment, and I may not have to say specifically once you see the little bunny rabbit. Jim was doing demonstration speeches one year, and a former student of his decided that a good demonstration, and I apologize for those of you, all of you who've just eaten, a good demonstration speech would be the proper way to butcher a rabbit. He brought a live rabbit, which obviously would imply that by the time he was done, it was not anymore. I brought the fur case.
That's the one.
But probably the one with the right color. Yeah. And Jim politely asked the young man to take it outside to do the first part of the butchering, and offered whatever kids wanted to go along could observe that part. And Jim said that if there was ever a subject that he wishes he had not had a demonstration speech on, he thinks that may have been it. So in honor of that, we're giving you a keychain. Hoping that you have more luck than the rabbit did. Before I sit down, since I get to speak first, I get to say this, and then everybody else has to compete. But I appreciate working with Jim. It's been a fun 9 years for me, and slightly more for him. And I would say that if I were ever, someone speaking of me as a teacher, if I were ever compared to Jim Schmidt, that is the highest compliment I could be paid, and I thank him for the opportunity to work with him. And now we will deal with some special guests. And Jim, I'm going to ask you to introduce us to your family that's here today, if you would.
I would be glad.
Since I don't know all of them.
Thank you, Dan. Those were some awfully nice words. Appreciate them. I think that most of you know that Mary Lou and I have 5 grown children. The oldest 2 are not able to be here today because they live so far away. Our daughter Rondi lives in Colorado Springs, where she's a nurse and is busy raising a family, 3 teenagers. Our second daughter Nancy is also a nurse. She lives in San Antonio. She has a family too, 2 little kids, and she's also a nurse. The other 3 children are all teachers, and so maybe it's kind of ironic, or at least it's certainly appropriate that they were able to be here with me today. And I'm very, very glad that they are, because this is a really special occasion for me and the entire family. And I'm really, really happy to have them here so that they can share. Dan asked me to introduce the family, so I will start with my lovely wife, Mary Lou, whom I think most of you know. And the daughters that we have here, I'll just take them in chronological order.
That's a compliment.
Starting then with daughter number 3, Sandy Schenecker. Why don't you stand up, please? Sandy is here from New Prague, along with her husband Larry, right beside her. And their 2 children, Nicholas and Anna Jo. Sandy is an elementary school teacher, a 2nd grade teacher in the New Prague school system. Daughter number 4 is Kathy Halbritter, and she's here with her husband Joel, the 2nd Joel in our family, and their family, Kaya Jo, and Andrew. Where is Andrew? There he is. He's hiding behind Uncle Joe. And Kathy is a special education teacher in the elementary school system in Wilmer. And number 5 is our son Joel. Joel is from St. James. I told you a little bit about him. For those of you who were at the earlier retirement party last week, his experiences in Guatemala and his decisions for going into education. Joel is presently teaching, as I said, in the St. James school system. He's an ESL teacher working with Hispanic students in the high school. So I'm really happy that these members of my family are here today. I wish they all could be, but I'm very thankful that these are. Thank you.
You'll notice on the program that there are door prizes, and Julie will help me hand those things out. Fortunately, Julie is organized because she brought along the list, which she gave me and I didn't bring. First of all, we have a couple of door prizes. The first one is a rain gauge, and it was donated by Schultz Insurers, and it is for all of the golf meet days that it rained and rained and rained, and you golfed anyway. And that goes to, look on your T's, folks, there's a little number, it goes to number 31. Anyone?
We had a few extras.
Oh, we had a few extra. How about number 46? Oh. And we also have a hat from Hedquist Motors, which is for all those sunny days Jim and his teams golfed. And that will go to number 62. 62.
Tom, check again.
How about number 30? We're starting to think you guys don't want a hat. Going once, going twice. 85. Else can know the number. 64. And we'll do a couple more really quick here. Pocket screwdrivers donated by Schultz Insurers. And for the fact that Jim will now have time for all those small projects around the house that he's probably been putting off. You're hoping he gets one of the screwdrivers? Number 65. There are two of these, by the way. Number 65 and number 46. 46. Speak up, sir. Now we will have a speech from Mr. Pat Hopperman, I believe. Bart? Pat.
Since we're in this together, it doesn't matter which one talks, right?
Bart Hopperman.
Dad has to take care of that camera thing, so. Anyway, this one's a little tough, because I really don't know where to begin, so that at the end it will make sense to you. But anyway, that van was sitting out in the upper south parking lot, as it always had been for a long, long time. One day when our track team had a meet at Wyndham, and our kids were running, we left school and went out to get in the car, and the rally wasn't there. And we thought, oh no, where's Roger Bossart? Is Roger here? Oh, were we upset with Roger, because we thought he told John to take the extra kids and go in that rally, and oh, that would not be a good thing to do. So we got in the car and headed to Wyndham, and we got there. The first thing we did was try to find one of the coaches. And we found Jack Walsh and said, is John here? Yeah, John was there. Why? How did he get here? Well, he rode the bus. Why? Well, our van isn't at school, and we don't know where it is, but forget it, it's no big deal. So it sort of haunted us. And then someone mentioned that, I guess it was Jack, when we were talking to him, that he thought he saw us picking Matthew up at the middle school. No, we didn't even have it. We had the old Buick. So we got back to Jackson, and we're trying to decide if we should be calling the police to report a stolen vehicle. While we're standing there, Tom can relate to this because he lived on the street up behind us. We're looking out the back window, and all of a sudden, there goes our brown and tan van. Mr. Schmidt was taking Teresa home from from the golf meet in our van. Now you need to know that Wells Bus Service always supplied extra vehicles when we ran short. And Mr. Schmidt just assumed that that was the Wells brown and tan van sitting out there. And when he and his team went out and loaded, the kids didn't think anything of it because they knew that Haberman's van got used quite often when they were short of vehicles. So they just got in and never said a word to Mr. Schmidt. And he came around the corner to drop Becky Priviloff, who was right next door to us, and Pat said, well, I'll just go out and ride down to school with Jim and I'll bring it back. So he went out, Becky got out of the van, Pat got in the rider's seat, and he looked at Jim and said, I'll ride down and bring it back. Jim said, oh, you're using it tomorrow? Says, well, yeah, I'm going to use it tomorrow and then probably for a few years yet. It's our van. You see, the kids do it all the time, and Jim did. The reason they didn't say anything is they just figured, well, hey, they must have been a little short of vehicles around here. This will do. So they got in, they went all the way to Esterville and back, and that's the saga of the stolen van.
He did say, gee, I thought it was kind of dirty.
Yeah, it was. Wasn't quite as clean. But we had 4 permanent kids, and so that made a difference. Our vehicles probably weren't as clean. But anyway, that is the story of the stolen van. But we were very, very close to calling police when I guess the timing was perfect. I often wondered what would have happened if they'd pulled you over, Jim. How would you have explained this? Anyway, the humorous part aside, I do have to say a special thanks to Jim Schmidt. From me, personally, Jim Schmidt was sort of my mentor. When I graduated from college, I graduated with a speech major and an English minor, which of course put my foot in the door to do an awful lot of subbing over the years. And when I subbed for Jim, Jim didn't have me just come in and babysit. Jim gave me work to do, and I loved every minute of it. Jim sort of renewed my love of English literature and things like that, that over the years when you're raising 4 little kids, you kind of put the reading aside sometimes. But I looked at Jim as an example and a role model, and he definitely has been. I know I could never live up to his reputation, but I work awfully hard to come as close as I can. I always told him I could walk in his classroom, I think, and take over and finish out a year. He was so organized. And that was always my idea, to be as organized or close to being as organized as Jim Schmidt. I'll never make it, I know I won't, but it's been fun trying. And I want to thank Jim for the inspiration that he has given me. And I think that every one of us who teach at that high school and everyone who has known Jim looks up to him, admires him. He's an example to all of us, and an example to anyone in education, that teaching can be fun, and you've earned over the years the respect not only of all of your students, but all of the people that have worked with you. Thank you. And you can use a rally anytime.
Thank you, Barb. We have a few more door prizes. We'll get through these fairly quickly here. The best is yet to come, though, folks, as far as prizes, because we have one of those really special grand prizes that you'll all, well, most of you will appreciate. Julie, we have some key rings from Hedenquist Motor to signify the countless times the ignition was turned on a driver education car, and at least once on Pat's van.
And Johnson Ford.
And from Johnson Ford. Over there. We have 4 of these, folks. One's for 70, and 9. Speak up, folks. And 23. And finally, number 15. Number 15. Gone. Number 33.
Quick.
Should be a lot of extra numbers. Number 1.
Nicholas.
He has one.
And now, some words.
33.
33. And now we'll hear from our school nurse, from lapel. That's what makes it impromptu, folks. We have an impromptu speech. And here, I'll pick a number and see who gets to do this. Well, you thought, no. Number 55. Number 55? Come on, Jim.
Pick a subject, pick a subject. Yeah, well, you won't like them.
This is about college sex life, it says.
3 minutes, sir.
3 minutes?
You may begin.
Well, I know a lot about college sex life. Because I was married when I was in college and I had a lot of sex. End of speech.
You know, there was a story that I was threatening to tell that I was told I couldn't, and I think I probably could have now. By the way, you were way under the allotted time that you had. Lost a lot of points for that. Wilma, thank you.
Jim, I've written a poem for your retirement. I also would like to say that I have really enjoyed working with Jim. He's been here all of the years that I have been here. I'm going to miss him very much. And I suddenly realized when I walked in the door today, Jim, that your leaving will probably put me up in one of the older spots on our staff members. Probably. Okay, to Jim Schmidt. 36 years in the Jackson schools, our friend Jim Schmidt has taught. Jim Schmidt, a friendly, caring man, perfection has always sought. It's hard to believe the things Jim's done while teaching at this school. There was speech in English and literature and the Bible's golden rule. Coached golf and football, class plays and declam. These are some of the things that he did. There was girls and boys basketball too, and driver's ed for many a kid. It was the kids in the driver's education class that our friend Jim Schmidt once taught that caused his wife, Mary Lou, concern. On his life, more insurance she bought. He's taken hundreds of trips to athletic events, usually traveled in school-owned vans. But one trip his team took that we'll never forget was in the van of the Habermans. Jim's been a good friend to students and staff, and he's done his work very well. He's going to be missed by all at the school. He's earned his retirement bell. Now these 36 years in the Jackson schools that our friend Jim Schmidt have come to an end. Now it's time for family and golf and more golf and best wishes from all of his friends.
Barney couldn't be here today. Most of you probably know why. So we will move on to the the door prize, number 3. And we have 3 more calculators. And these are, let's see, Julie said these are to represent what Jim will need to add up those TRA payments. Number 34. Number 12. And number 37. And if I'm not mistaken, it's time for another impromptu speech, and so we'll draw for the basket again. And, wow, number 55. Longer than the last.
This is entitled Your Favorite Gibbons Boys Story.
About George.
This takes some sorting. Because there are a lot of stories. And they were wonderful times, let me tell you. A lot of them were in school. Some of those stories were sort of slipping back into my mind now. But the one story that is coming back to me right now involves a Jeep that Tom had. Maybe 15 or 20 years ago, or maybe 25, I don't know, it really doesn't matter. But Tom and George, working at the golf course, used this Jeep almost every day in various jobs that they had to do out there. And it's been so long ago now that I've really forgotten the details of the story, but I think it was Tom, and Tom will probably say it was George. It doesn't matter, but those of you who are familiar with the golf course know the water hole where our reservoir is, and that pond of water comes into this story. Well, one of the two, whoever it was, I think went to check on the pump and left this Jeep up there beside the pond, and I believe it was George, now that I think about it. I went down to check on the pump, and in the meantime, he'd either forgotten to set the brake or the thing didn't have a brake. That's probably what it was. Because a lot of Tom and George's things didn't have certain parts. So, you know what happened. The Jeep started to roll, and it went down the slope and into the pond. And there it sat, half submerged, as I recall it. And this is the part that's just a little bit vague, but I think that George went over the hill to where Tom was working and said something about the Jeep. And Tom's reply was something to the extent, well, what about it? I believe maybe he said, get in, drive over here if you can, or I'll fix it or something. And George just shook his head or whatever, and he says, I can't, Tom, it's in the pond. I may not have that story exactly right, but that, in essence, is what happened, the Jeep in the pond. And that's just one of many given stories.
Thanks, Jim. A little more information on that one than the last. We'll now hear from Bay Kerrigan.
I don't know why I'm up here because I hardly know Jim. But I've heard so much about that guy, and I want you people to know the truth about this guy. years and through many, many different experiences. How many of you know that Jim's hometown is Garrettson, South Dakota? How many know that? Okay. How many know what Garrettson, South Dakota is noted for? Jesse James. Jesse James. How many know that James is Schmidt's middle name? Folks, we have none other but Jesse James Schmidt. And from what I've heard from the people over around Garrettson is that his exploits, Jimmy's, far exceed that other guy. Now, I've heard about Jimmy being such a great guy, you know. Let me tell you something about this guy. We worked together during the school year, but we also had a painting group, and we worked like dogs. And we put in some awful long days, but one thing about Schmidt, on Wednesdays, we didn't work quite as late, you know. So we would get here and play golf. He and I were partners. We were a team, you know, in this golf league. What would you think of a guy that would dump you after having all those experiences and working together? He would dump you and get a different partner. Now, it would be different if this partner, you know, that this new partner he got was better looking than me, or smarter, or played golf better, you know. So who's he pick? Tom Gibbons. Now I know that Tom has won the championship at the club more times than I have. But, Jimmy, has anyone told you that Tom has a great potential? I have a lot of potential. Anyway, that's Jimmy. Jimmy did that. Another thing, you know, we all say that Jimmy is very calm, quiet, collected, never uses bad language, things like that. Well, when we would paint, I got the job of painting windows. And so when we'd move our ladders around, sometimes Jim's ladder would be above me, and he'd be painting away. And Jim, he was always so neat and clean. He never had paint. I was always messed with paint. He was always nice and clean. And he always wore these clean shoes, new shoes, nice clean shoes. And so he'd be standing behind me on the ladder. I'd be painting my window. I'd turn around, and here would be Jim's shoes. So I would paint the tops of his shoes. This would happen a number of times. But I don't know if I can use this language again. I'll try it. This guy said to me, "Darn you, Kerrigan." I've got a lot of them, but I'll have to admit that over the years that Jimmy was a great guy, a great guy to work with. And I know when we started the girls basketball program here, there was no doubt in my mind who was going to get that girls basketball job, because I wanted somebody, you know, that was good character, could depend upon, good wisdom, a lot of wisdom, and that was Jim all the way. The last thing I'd like to say, Jim, is best wishes for the friend.
Thanks, Bill.
surprises, so hope really hard here. We have some office supplies from various suppliers. Julie has amassed in her little treasure trove. We have 2 sets of these things, and these represent the work and requisitions required by the school, and the fact that he always had the proper paperwork done on time and always had an extra pen just in case. And so one of these goes to number 25. Okay, number 25, missed that one. Number 10. Go right over here, Julie.
Oh, here we go.
And number 77. And we have one more. Wait a minute, I'm sorry, I was wrong about that. We do have one more impromptu speech. Do I need to draw, folks? Let's see.
55.
Thank you.
This one is entitled The Best Basketball Game of Coaching. Well, I don't think there's any question in my mind. I was the initiator of the girls basketball program in Jackson High School, as Vic just mentioned. And that was a privilege to start that program. I, as you know, have 4 daughters, and I was very eager to do something for girls in regard to athletics and extracurricular activities, and it was just a natural thing for me to go into. But as far as, what was the most, the best, yes, best basketball game of coaching. Without any doubt, there were some games that were bigger than others and seemingly more important than others, but the first win that first year was the most important to me. It was the best one. We had a group of girls who obviously didn't know much about basketball. None of the girls did in the state of Minnesota at that time, but Jackson was a year behind the other schools in our conference. They had all started their programs the year before, and so we were a year late, and it was tough. And we went through that season, and I remember well. We had 10 losses and 3 wins, and I didn't think we'd win a game when I first stepped onto the floor with those girls the first week or so of school. But I don't remember who it was against, but I do remember that it was the 4th game of the season. And I think, oh yeah, it's coming back to me now. It was Pipestone that we were able to beat, and it was very, very exciting. And that I would call the best win. Thank you.
This next speaker, when he arrived, pulled me aside and said, I didn't know I was speaking today.
Jim Brown.
But since most of you know Jim pretty well, he always has something to add. And usually it's humorous, so we'll trust him to take care of it.
I'll probably never forget the time I told LaVon Nelson that at a meeting. I don't know, she probably maybe not remember that, but I mentioned that one night at a meeting down at the middle school, and I said something about, well, normally I don't have much to say. And she laughed, I bring you greetings from the middle school. I still consider myself a middle school staff member, at least for another month or so. I am, as most all of you know, going to be Jim's sub next year. I spent an hour or so with Jim this morning, and there isn't a person in this room that could not step in and take Jim's place next year. He is so highly organized, and I'm not even going to shoot for that kind of organization. All they really wanted was just another natty dresser. Anyway, yes. I'm just tickled. I really am. For years, I've always thought that there was only one position at the high school in the English department that I really would like to have had, and that's Jim's. And so it was appropriate that on your retirement, with other things that were going on, I still in my heart wanted to be an 8th grade teacher, but there was an opportunity there, and so depending on what would happen the following year, this was the time to go, and I'm so really pleased. And if you were replacing somebody, you'd be pleased if you saw how organized he was too. So I wanted to share just a couple of stories. This past year, I was working on the contest play. One night after rehearsal, we were just sitting around visiting about a variety of things. Kids started talking about teachers they had during the current year. And when I got these, I can't read anything after anyway. Started talking about teachers they currently had. Anyway, and one of the students made this comment about Mr. Schmidt. I think I've already shared it with Jim. But she said, Mr. Schmidt is the only teacher I've ever had that I worked for just because it was him. I think he is God. That's the exact quote. There isn't anything else to the story, but what a compliment. God almighty. Hell, I'm subbing for God next year. I have one other short story that Jim had spoken about the golf course, and those of you that are familiar with the golf course are familiar with hole number 3. When you start out, you go south of the golf club for number 1, then down number 2, and then we have one steep hole, number 3. And let's see, okay, I'm going up number 3, right up here, and off to my left there's a cart path. And then beyond that's kind of an old gravel pit. There's a guy who lives down in there, a little trailer house, kind of a crotchety old man. Anyway, well, those of you that have ever been around Jim in the classroom or on the golf course or digging ditches or painting houses, he dresses the same all the time. He's the only guy out there that's working in sweat and humidity. His pants stay creased. I go out there and I come home and my wife just about shoots me. I've got so many grease stains in my pockets. Schmidt does the same thing I do and he walks off just like he walked on. Anyway, he never makes an error in anything, you know. And so anyway, this one particular day, they were on hole number 3, and there's a little porta potty right on the edge there. And anyway, this is where Mr. Schmidt, you'd never catch him slipping off by the trees that run along the side there. Porta potty for Mr. Schmidt, except this one time. Mr. Schmidt stepped across the road by the shrubs. Anyway, and he was relieving himself, and the man who lived down in the trailer house and owned the property stepped down to the property and hollers out, "Hey, I don't whiz in your yard, don't whiz in mine." It wasn't quite those exact words, but it was something like that. Anyway, I took Jim along with all the other staff members, community members, students, former students, present students, you know, consider it a real pleasure, real treat that I've had the experience to not only work with you in the school system, but to golf with you, to do things in our community together. It's been a real honor to consider you a friend. Thank you.
As I said, Jim wasn't sure what he was going to say. Could you hear him in the back? Rox is kind of sweating up here because she has to follow that. And I'm surprised that your wife didn't know that story. Rox Hamble.
Well, I didn't have Mr. Schmidt's English speech class, so this is my speech on a little piece of paper. But we didn't have any driver's ed stories, and we didn't go around and ask a lot of kids, but we couldn't think of any, and I'm sure there are lots of funny driver's ed stories where you had to use the brake and avoid accidents. But this past summer, there's one story I know about because my son was the one that was taking driving lessons from Jim. It was John Coyle and Ryan Hample in the car, and it was a brand new driver's ed car, I believe, this past summer. And they were driving down the road and going along, and John Coyle says, "Mr. Schmidt, I smell something." John was the one driving. And Mr. Schmidt said, "Oh, no, that's okay. Just keep driving." And then pretty soon Ryan was sitting in the back and he said, "Mr. Schmidt, I smell something too." And he said, "Well, I don't. It's okay. Just keep driving." Ryan says, "Pretty soon there's a haze inside the car." And Mr. Schmidt's always so calm, especially, I suppose you have to be that way when you're a driver's ed instructor. He said, "John, maybe you should pull over to the side of the road." And it happened to be where the parallel parking posts are. And he got out of the car and opened up the hood of the car and says, "There's a fire in the car, get out!" Anyway, there was a fire under the hood, and so he gets a rag and puts it on the end of the driver's ed parallel parking stick, and that's how he put out the fire. Now, I would have never thought of that, but Jim thought of that, and so I have a rag to give you just in case your own car ever starts on fire. And before I forget, I'd like to thank KKOJ and KRAQ and Doug Johnson for the golf tees that are on the tables, and you may take those with you. He was nice enough to donate those for table decorations. Okay, then I have one other story. This isn't a driver's ed story, but this one happened quite recently. Yesterday, as a matter of fact. I happen to have a neighbor whose daughter is on the golf team, and they knew we were having this party for you today. So she asked if I needed one more story to tell for your retirement party. And it seems like the keys, something with the keys and the band. Anyway, to make a long story short, Jim is always so organized. We know that. Everybody has said that. And he was very organized yesterday, too. He gave the keys to a student to keep track of. And then the student let another student use them to get into the van to take his stuff home with him. And anyway, the keys were on their way back to Jackson, I believe, with that student and his dad. I'm only hearing this as hearsay. But Jim, again, thought of a solution. I probably would have been running around Marshall thinking, no, what am I going to do? And had a key made, the Chrysler dealership made the key, and he arrived home safely with the students and again. But so one last story about the keys from yesterday, and a van story, kind of. I guess golfing and the vans all go together. Okay, then I'll try to make this short. As I've been here a long time, everybody knows that, right? And it's always exciting, or you think about the seniority list is always kind of funny. It hangs in the teacher's lounge, and you always wait to get to the front page of the seniority list. Well, I'm on the front page now. I've been here quite a while. And then they were putting together the combined seniority list, Jackson and Lakefield. And I'm really old, because I'm still on the front page. Or I've been here a long time. I thought maybe I'd slip back a couple places to the second page. But the best thing about having been here a long time is having taught with Jim a long time. And I'm not going to try not to do this, and as I look at the table back there, teaching with all of those people has been really special. I will include them in the things that I've learned. It's a good thing I'm almost last, right? Okay, the things that I've learned from all of them. To work hard. You get out of things what you put into them. Always put the students first. Laughter always makes things better. And the harassment policy has kind of changed that a little bit. We used to have some really good jokes, and now people are afraid to tell them. And also how important family is, and that's our school family has always been important, but especially our own personal families. And all of these people exemplify that. Tom, George, Al, Big, and Jim, too, especially. And I want to thank you for all the good years. Best wishes in your experience.
A slight change in the program here. I'm tempted to have another impromptu speech because I know there's some really good things in here. But instead, we're going to have another door. We have grand prize. We actually have kind of two of them, and the first one, the first one I'm going to draw from here, and it's a set of I assume brand new golf balls. And amazingly, number 55 has something to go. Something good having that number for you. And now I have the honor of doing what we consider the true grand prize, because it's something that one of the high school staff members gets to keep. So if you are a high school staff member or a teacher or soon to be a teacher at the high school, you are eligible for this particular prize. It came to our knowledge a number of years ago that when they listed the people who were assigned to work on floats and do class advisors, that amazingly enough, the name was left off. In the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, Jim Schmidt has not been a class advisor. You know, in the first year he kind of ignored it, and then one day he was sitting in the lounge, he goes, I feel a little bit guilty, should I say something? We're all going, are you kidding? Of course you don't say anything. What do you do to get off that list? So our grand prize drawing is for who gets to be off the list next year. Although I suspect it will be checked twice now. We always kind of coveted that position, Jim. And being senior staff member at the high school, is that how you earned that, or exactly what did qualify you for that?
We didn't want it.
Comes the time when Jim gets to express his views on this whole issue. Be kind, Jim. And if you'd welcome him up here, we appreciate his words.
Mary Lou wants me to be truthful. The last thing she told me before I got up here was, be sure to tell him that you're not very organized at home. Well, I see on the program it says rebuttal, and but I only have a minimum, it says, of 5 minutes. There are a couple things that I want to say, and the first is in regard to that van. I had no idea during that entire trip that I was in the wrong vehicle. The van that was being provided by Wells Bus was a brown van. Matt Haberman's van was a brown van. We were a little late that day, so I was hurrying. Gary Wellington told me he'd leave the van in the parking lot, then he'd leave the keys in it. Everything fit. The van was brown. I got into it. The keys were in it. We got the girls in the van and we took off for Esterville. And as Barb related in the story, the girls didn't think anything of it. Because I asked them later, why didn't you tell me? Well, we knew it was Haberman's van. We just thought you were supposed to be using it. And when I finally did arrive at the Haberman home, well, actually it was to drop off Becky, and Pat came out. He got into the van and sat down, and I said, Barb didn't have this quite right, although it was pretty close. I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, why shouldn't I be here? It's my van." And it wasn't until that moment that I realized that I had taken the wrong van. But I trust, Pat, that the school did reimburse you for mileage on that trip, did they not?
Actually, you know what I did, Mr. Schmidt? Jim came with 17 cents a mile that they were paying at that time. And I said, "No, Jim, I will not take 17 cents a mile. I want the same exact thing as you were going to pay Wells Bus." And the reason being is we didn't want our vehicle on the road. There's a liability problem. We were trying to get out of using the van. You kept
There's another item that I want to rebut. And that is with a big story about painting days. You know, he said I was so neat, never got any paint on me or anything like that. We were golfing buddies too, that's true. And I don't know how many times this happened. On a Wednesday, I would rush home, take a shower, get into my golf clothes, and head out to the golf course so we could play our match. And this happened many times. We'd be walking down the first fairway, side by side, and Kerrigan would look at me, and he'd say, "Jim, for crying out loud, you've got paint there behind your ear." Now that was okay. But invariably then, he'd reach over and he'd start scratching it, trying to clean me up. Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful time for me. I have enjoyed every second of it. And to see all of you here has just warmed my heart immensely. It's a very special day for me, obviously, and for Mary Lou, and for my family. And I'm just so grateful that all of you have come to help me celebrate. Some of you know that I am a bit of a David Letterman fan. At least I like some of his top 10 lists. I did one for Mike Kuntz's retirement a couple of years ago, and you heard one that was done here today. And I couldn't let this go by without putting my own top 10 reasons for enjoying retirement together. So if you'll bear with me, I just want to share this with you. These are my top 10 reasons for retiring and enjoying it. Starting with number 10. Big referred to our working like dogs when we were painting. That just happens to coincide with number 10. I can now stop working like a dog and start sleeping like one. Number 9. I can now start a new career in grandchild spoiling. Reason number 8 for enjoying retirement. I'll never have to put off until the weekend what I would really enjoy doing right now. And a long weekend can be as long as I want it to be. Reason number 7. Now I'll have time to find out what's in all those magazines we subscribe to at home. And number 6. Now I'll be able to do some volunteer work. I'm going to voluntarily do whatever the heck I want. Reason number 5 for retiring. Now I'll never again have to wait until evening to read the morning paper. Number 4, from now on, 8 to 5 will just be a baseball score. Reason number 3, now I can enjoy a new position that I intend to take. Horizontal in a hammock. And reason number 2, never again will it take over an hour for the clock to move from 3:40 to 3:45. And reason number 1 for enjoying retirement, now I can finally be a consultant. something I've always wanted to be. And the first thing I'm going to do is consult a road map for the best route to some place warm. Thank you very much. I'm not quite done yet. I'm a speech teacher, you know. Golf has been mentioned quite a bit here today, and I will not deny that I love the game and that I think it has a lot of analogy to life, and I'm not going to get philosophical about that right now. But there are a couple of quotations that I'm just going to share very quickly, and then I'll be done. I think that this first quotation is one that you've all heard, but you probably didn't know that it came from a golfer. It was one of the early pioneers of American golf, Walter Hagen, who said, "Take time along the way to stop and smell the roses." And that's what I intend to do. Now I'll have some time to do that, and maybe some time to grow my own roses. I look forward to that. There's another golf quotation that's always been very important to me. I've seen it many times. I have it on a plaque. I guess it's an anonymous quotation. There's never been an author's name with it, but it goes like this. In life, as in golf, it's the follow-through that matters. It's the follow-through that matters. And if I could use that metaphor of a golf swing, I've taken my swing at teaching, and it's been a wonderful career. It's been a good swing. I hit the ball solid. It's flown far and straight, right on target, and the follow-through has been good. And there's no other swing that I would have wanted to have taken than to have been a teacher. It's been very rewarding, very enjoyable. And now I get to take another swing at retirement. And I hope to make a good swing at that too, and hit the ball far and straight and make a good follow-through. Now I want to close with a third quotation, and this one has nothing to do with golf. About a week ago, one of my very closest friends in the high school, one of my fellow teaching staff members, gave me a retirement card in which she had written some very special things. And one thing that she wrote on that card was this. She said that one of the things that adds warmth and love to life is friendship. And how true that is. Friendship adds love and warmth to life. And I'm going to leave a lot of things behind as I go on now. A lot of them good, almost all of them very fine things. But I'm going to take a lot with me. And one of the most important things that I am able to take with me is friendship. The friends that I've learned to love and cherish in my job, in my profession. Not just teachers, but those who surround us, all the people I've worked with, and all of you here today, my friends. And I thank you that that's one thing that will never change as long as we're all here. So thank you for being my friends. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for all the kind words today. It's been a very, very great, very touching experience. Thank you, and God bless you, everyone. Oh, I'm supposed to open this. I was met here at the table with a gift that says, "Jim, have a happy, healthy, and long retirement from your 4 sons-in-law." So this is from my daughter's husbands. Oh, wow. Thank you very, very much.
There's a story to this too. It's kind of a simple story, but I supplement my diet with Kretschmer's wheat germ. I sprinkle a spoon or two of that on my breakfast cereal every morning. And my son Larry works in the mill at New Prague, and he has access to wheat germ. And so in this box are 4 cubes wheat germ. 4 of them, I assume 1 for each son-in-law. Thank you very much.
We have a few other gifts here yet, and I assumed that I was just going to allow Rox to hand them out, but she's a little misty at the moment. These are from everybody here to show our appreciation for the time we've had with you, Jim, and for you to enjoy in your retirement.
Thank you very much. Goodness. To whom do I thank? Everyone? Everyone? This is from everyone. And it is one of the new $100 bills. Thank you all very much. I will not spend this frivolously. I will buy something special so that it always reminds me of you and this occasion. Thank you.
Oh, those are just personal cards.
This is a personal card.
Yeah.
Everybody signed it. Thank you. This is a present. I have a suspicion, eh? Oh, that turned out to be so bad. It says Clinique for men, and I was just kind of wondering. Oh, this is a gift certificate from the Jackson High School staff and friends. A golf day, golf all day with a cart at Brooks Golf Club. Oh my goodness, there are 2 of them. You take one. That's a wonderful gift. Thank you very, very much. And then there's this. Oh, it's a caricature. The golf picture and the caricature, that is precious. It's just very, very special. That's a wonderful gift. Thank you all very, very much.
I'd just like to thank everybody for coming and taking this time to spend with Jim. And I assume he has a few more minutes. He can speak a few words to him as you go. And Jim pointed out to me that due to the time limitations, we'll be on shortened periods this afternoon. Enjoy your afternoon.
I just
All Mike could say last night. Oscar's chipping in like a man. He's right back.